Good afternoon, everyone. We made it to the last day, the last session. I know I'm the person that's standing in the way for you going home, having some cocktails downstairs, but hopefully, how do we get my screen? There we go. But hopefully you'll be able to take some useful information away from this session and enjoy this. So what I'm going to be talking to you about is how to utilize SMS to improve long-term strategy. So just to get into it, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we at DoSomething.org use SMS. I'll share a little bit about how we use it, give you a case study of how we've been using SMS this year, and then give you some tips and tricks on how you can use it. So just kind of a show of hands, who here in this room sends text messages? Okay, great. And if you didn't raise your hands, I know it's been a long day. I know you're lying. We all send texts. And can I get a show of hands here of who's actually using SMS or text messaging to engage with their audiences in their companies? Okay, so a few people. So for the people that aren't using SMS right now, you're definitely missing out on a huge opportunity to meet your audience where they are. For those of you who are using SMS, hopefully you can walk away and learn not just how to use it, but the way to get the most value out of SMS. So let me start by just kind of introducing myself and what DoSomething is, why I'm qualified to talk about text messaging. So DoSomething.org, we are the largest tech platform focused exclusively on young people and social change. So through our platform, we're activating young people across a variety of different causes that they care about, whether that's bullying or homelessness, LGBT rights, gun violence, getting registered to vote. Whatever a young person cares about, we're going to give them a way to take action on that. Currently, we have over 6 million members in 131 countries. And we're texting with 3.6 million young people in every area code of the US. And are most people here, I'm assuming, are from Atlanta or from the Atlanta area? Yes? So I don't know if anyone has had an opportunity to go down to the Beltline. Just a few months ago, we actually worked with some local artists here on a campaign that we had run called Missing in History. Young people were telling us that they wanted to learn more about figures in history that weren't being included in their textbooks. So we worked with some local Atlanta young people to create this mural where they were highlighting this woman, Adrienne McNeil Hurden. She was the first black faculty member of the University of Atlanta and a big person, someone who is really important in the community. So through the campaign, Missing in History, we were having young people educate their friends and family on those forgotten figures, and also getting them out in their local communities to do real work. The reason why I wanted to include this, one, because we're in Atlanta. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's down by the Beltline behind the Kroger. But one of the things that is great about this is we actually have a text call out. You can't see it here, but anybody who's walking by this will see some copy here that says text history to 38383. They'll then get a text that tells them a little more information about who this is, and then how they can take action and be more involved in their communities. So why do we use SMS? I have a few really good reasons. I think the first one is probably the most important. There's a 97% open rate for text message. So I know any email marketers in the room would die for an open rate like that. 97%. Just let that sink in. Basically what this means is that regardless if someone's replied to you, your audience is seeing your message. They're getting what you want them to see in front of them on their phone where they are. So definitely any parents in the room, I'm sorry to break it to you, your kids did see your text, they're just not texting you back. The second reason is that text allows us to meet our members where they are. 87% of millennials say that they have their phone in arm's reach 24/7. So if we're not able to meet them on their phones, we're not going to be able to meet them anywhere. The third reason is it helps us develop brand trust. Think about who you generally text with. It's your friends or your family, the people that you trust. So we definitely have to take that into consideration when we're crafting the messaging that we send over text. Everything that I send out comes from me. Hi, it's Freddie. We make sure that it's a real person that they're hearing from and not just a brand. They know that I'm becoming that other friend in their phone who they can get information on, different news that's coming out, different ways that they can take action. I become that kind of camp counselor person in their phone who they know they can trust. I think another good example of kind of developing that brand trust, making sure that they see you as a human. When I kind of first started out doing this, definitely have made some mistakes along the way. One day I was trying to send out a text. It was supposed to be a segmented message to about 4,000 people who had joined a campaign with us through this Jewish organization. So it was pretty much a group of young Jewish members who had taken action with us over the high holidays. So I had meant to send a message to them asking them, hey, are you interested to learn how you can take more action with other young Jewish people like you? So I learned two things that day. One, not to call out somebody by what you think they are or how you're segmenting or targeting that message, because then they're like, wait, how did you know that I was Jewish? So one, don't do that. But the second thing I learned was, one, definitely double check who you're sending it to, because I sent it to 2 million people at the time. So we ended up getting a lot of messages back being like, I'm not Jewish, or what, like, why are you sending this to me? But it became a learning opportunity where I was able to go back out to all of those people and tell them, hey, it's Freddie, I actually am a real person, I'm a human, we make mistakes. Sorry that I sent you this text. Here's a playlist, a Spotify playlist I made of a bunch of sorry songs. So it had like, If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher, It's Too Late to Apologize. So it was a really great moment to develop that trust, because I was saying, hey, actually I'm a real person and I make mistakes too. And it was also a great way for us to engage our audience, not just on the platform of text, but get them to go to Spotify or get them to go to Twitter. And I'll talk more about that later. The fourth reason that we love using text is it's scalable. So, right, that mural that I showed before, it has that keyword call out. People can text in. It's as easy as just putting a keyword on a billboard ad, on a flyer, having an influencer call it out. I'm sure during the political election you saw a lot of people doing text call outs during their political rallies. Just recently in March, during the March for Our Lives, the student activists had text call-outs. And that one day at the march, they had 40,000 young people text in. And this is a great way, one, that they can kind of acquire a list, grow the people that they're communicating with, but give a way that they can continue to engage them beyond the march and can follow up with them on new actions that they can take leading up to the midterm elections, because that's their kind of big thing. A lot of people think that young people have a really short attention span, but if anything that you're seeing in the news shows you now is that young people will be engaged. And then the last reason that I definitely love SMS is that kind of age-old quote of creativity loves constraint, right? Email, great for long-form content. SMS, you really have 160 characters. There's a literal constraint of how much you can put in a text message. So it really forces you to think, what is the most important thing that I need my audience to know? And what's the one thing that I want them to do? So creativity really forces you to think about that. So now I just want to tell you a little bit about how we use SMS. I think that we do a pretty good job of it, and give you a little case study of what we're doing right now. So back in January, we launched this campaign called Grab the Mic. Grab the Mic is a year-long activation trying to uplift and amplify the voices of young people and show them the different powers that they have to create change, whether that's online, in their communities, or at all levels of government. And our main goal of this campaign is really to get young people registered to vote or to get out to vote. And if they're under 18, show them that they have power to influence their friends and family who can to get them to go out to vote. So through this campaign, every month we're highlighting a different cause that we know young people care about, and we're making sure that we're connecting the dots with why those causes are important and how the impact they can make in their community can be amplified by also making sure their voices are heard at the polls. Through SMS, we're able to follow up with these different actions and kind of level people up from something that's as simple as sharing a quiz online to then taking an action at their school to then going out to vote. So for example, this month, we're focusing on anti-hate crime and discrimination. Since the presidential election, hate crimes against Muslim communities have risen 91%. And we know that our young people have friends and neighbors and family who are in the Muslim community. So this month, it's the month of Ramadan, and it's a very special holiday in the Muslim community that's celebrating things like community and compassion and mercy, and that's something that we can all get behind. So through this, we gave our young people different actions that they could take. So one, sharing that information on their Facebook, on their Instagram, so their friends can see that information that they want to educate them on. We then gave them a real-world action that they could take by creating Happy Ramadan cards that they'll send back to us, and we're going to be distributing to different mosques around the country that have been targets of hate crimes. And then the final piece there is, again, showing them that through their power, they can elect officials who are going to stand up and protect people in their communities and elect officials who are going to stand up against discrimination and against hate. All of those different actions we're able to follow up with them on over SMS and remind them of these actions that they can take. We can segment by which ones they have and have not done and remind them to do it. Here's an example of what I sent earlier in this year. Like I said, every message comes from Freddie. I don't know if you can see it. It says, "It's Freddie in 2018. Everyone has the power to drive change. Want to be part of something bigger than yourself this year, yes or no?" So we make this interactive. We make sure it's not just a push notification, but something that they can engage with me on, because text is a two-way conversation. This is what they said if they say yes. If they say no, I can push them to a different action that they might be interested in, or maybe I need to give them more information about what do something is. It got cut off here a little bit, but essentially when someone said yes, we told them, "Great, you're now part of this movement. Will you help us recruit others into it?" And we gave them a link to a Facebook post where they could then tag their friends and ask them to join. From that, we saw a huge spike in traffic from Facebook back to our site, and then those friends were able to join the campaign and kind of continue that cycle. So we really think of SMS as a launch pad to create engagement across different channels, whether that's on Facebook, on Instagram, on Spotify. Wherever we want young people to meet us, we can push them there. It doesn't have to stay just on this channel. Of our young people who have been taking part in Grab the Mic, we've seen that they're 10 times more likely to vote than the general population. And like I mentioned before, we're trying to level them up to different actions and take multiple actions with us. SMS helps us put those actions in front of them. With every action they take, they're 1.5 times more likely to go out to vote. But I think the stat that I'm most impressed by is this. We had a control group of our members who were not receiving any of this Grab the Mic messaging. Of the members who have, they're 40 times more likely to be active with us. So that means 40 times more likely to take actions, 40 times more likely to come back to our site month over month. We're creating a long-term engagement that we know that we're going to keep them with us to take action, until they're ready to graduate college or until they're ready to go to the polls. So how can you use SMS? I'm going to give you a few tricks and tips so when you get started, you're not blindly walking into a pool. Don't text and walk. It's very dangerous. I see people doing it in New York City all the time. We'll probably do a campaign on texting and walking soon. So the first tip for you is know your audience. And I think a lot of these tips are going to sound very familiar to some of the email marketing. So if you already have an email marketing program, you're kind of going to follow a lot of those tips. So knowing your audience, where are they coming from and where do you want them to go? The message that you send to someone who showed up at a political rally and texted in a keyword might be different than the message you want to send someone who found us through a scholarship site or someone who came to us through like a college finder. Where do you want them to be? Like I said, creativity loves constraint. You want to know what is your main goal to get this person to. For us, it's getting somebody registered to vote, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to ask someone to register to vote the first time they're with us. I have to understand what their journey is and what are the different actions they need to take to get to that point. So that's why something like Grab the Mic works really well for us, because we're able to start with lower actions and then level them up to something as difficult. Actually, it's not that difficult to register to vote. If you're not, get registered, text VOTE to 38383. My second tip, craft your recipe. So what do I mean by this? Does anyone remember when Netflix used to send DVDs, right? It's like when Blockbuster was still around, but they were like dying this slow death. So Netflix, when they were sending out DVDs, they kind of found this secret recipe that if they got someone to put 7 movies in their queue, that number 7 was the lucky number that turned that person into a long-term, lifetime Netflix subscriber. So for us, we're always thinking about, okay, what is our Netflix 7? What is our lucky number to get someone to do what we want them to do? With the Grab the Mic example where we're having young people create Ramadan cards, we've seen that it takes about 3 days for someone to create that card and then text back a photo of it to us and let us know they did it. So knowing that, we can craft a recipe, set up triggered messages. Okay, this person signed up. Set an automated message to send 3 days later to remind them to send back that photo. The second part of crafting your recipe is building that relationship, making sure that you're onboarding your members to what the texts are that you're sending, introducing yourself. I've shared a lot of personal information with my list of 3 million people, and I do that because I want them to know that if I'm going to ask them for their personal information or to give me things that is going to be valuable for us, I want them to know the reason behind that and also kind of see that trust. I've shared this with you, will you share it with me? The third part is to consider your frequency, right? Just like email, you don't want to over-message, you don't want to spam your audience. But depending on your audience, the things that you're providing for them, your frequency might be different. At Do Something, we send messages either on a weekly or monthly basis based on what our users are telling us they want to, how often they want to hear from us, or more implicitly, not explicitly, if they're not responding back over a certain period of time, we'll move them off of our weekly list and start messaging them monthly. But who knows, maybe you're sending out like a daily confidence text, or there's text programs about getting people to quit smoking. Those are things that they've told their audience they're going to receive on a daily basis. So I'm not necessarily saying don't send a daily text, but make sure that your audience knows that's what they should be expecting. And then the fourth part about that recipe is A/B testing. Every single message that I send out is A, B, C, D, E tested. So we make sure that we're optimizing and creating content that's going to motivate our young people to take action. So that A/B test can be around structure. Do I say, hi, it's Freddie at the beginning of the message? Do I sign off as Freddie? Do I ask this as a multiple choice question? Yes, no. Do I just put another keyword in front of them? And then there's obviously the content part. What's going to motivate people? If we're talking about, for example, we've been doing a lot of messaging around school shootings. I've sent one too many messages about school shootings this year. But the A/B tests allow us to know, is it anger? Is it that kind of emotional trigger that's going to get a young person to get more involved in this? Or is it something like social proof, knowing that there's 100,000 young people going to march and they want to become part of that too? My third tip is creating a cross-channel ecosystem. Like I mentioned before, it doesn't all have to stay on text. You can use SMS as a way to create larger engagement on other channels that you're already using, whether that's email, whether that's Instagram, social media. You can push them to other places. But you don't want to woof. So what do I mean by that? Who here has seen The Office? Any Office fans? Okay, great. So for those that don't know, there's this episode where Ryan the Temp decides he wants to create this new business social media platform called woof.com, where in one single button, you can send the same exact message over email, over text, send a voicemail, post it on Facebook and Instagram, and get a fax. Nobody wants the same message in all of these different places. You do not want to do that. You need to show that each platform has a value so that your audience wants to have all of those touch points with you on those different platforms. So for us, SMS has a value of being kind of a deadline or a reminder or a breaking news source. Email for us is where we can do more long-form content. You just want to make sure that there's a different value that you're adding on all those platforms. And then the last part is to provide that user agency. It's okay if your audience doesn't want to hear from you on text and just on email. Or it's okay if someone wants to hear from you just from text and not on email. You just need to give them that choice so they can tell you how and when they want to hear from you. And then lastly, you just need to choose your tools. So again, what is your audience? What are your needs? I'm going to share a few different tools that you could use to get started. Second, you want to be mobile first, right? SMS is on your phone. You want to make sure that anything that you might be pushing them to is mobile friendly, but that doesn't mean that you need to keep them there on the phone. You can use SMS to push them out and do things in the real world, just like we're doing. So we've actually created ways that they can, call their elected officials, or ways they can text back their zip code and we can tell them where there's a local event or a local rally that they can attend. We give them actions they can take in the real world and then use SMS as a way for them to show us, hey, look, I was at this rally, or hey, I created this card, or I put this poster up in school. We can take those photos that they sent to us over text and then share them out on our other platforms like Instagram and Facebook so the rest of the community can see what a young person is doing with us. And then those additional interaction tools that can be something like tools that allow people to call their officials. They can call brands, or you can set up things like Zendesk or Front can integrate with SMS. So you can actually use SMS as a way to do customer support. It's really based on what you want to use this platform for. So in terms of some of the tools you can use, just disclaimer, I work at a nonprofit, so I'm not trying to sell you anything. These are just some examples of things that we've used and that I've heard of as I've kind of been in this SMS space. If you're just trying to get started, you have a pretty low volume, something like Textedly has a very cheap price plan where you can send anywhere from like 100 to 100,000 texts. Dexter. This is a program that actually allows you to build out chatbots. So if that's a program that you're working on too, you can create messaging for those chatbots, but also sync it up to send those messages through SMS or to places like Slack. It's pretty user-friendly. If you're looking to do a much larger program, but you don't necessarily have a tech bandwidth to get this set up, I would recommend something like Mobile Commons or an Mgage. These are platforms, kind of like a MailChimp, that has a user interface, so someone like myself who's not very tech-friendly or can't code is able to craft content, put it into the platform, create groups, create segmentation, all within that, and not need a developer's help. And then if you're doing something that's more high volume, maybe you have more developers who can help get this program up, you might want to use something like Twilio. Twilio is a large aggregator. They're the person that sends and receives the messages, but with an open API, you can really build whatever it is that you want on top of it, so you can really build anything that's suited towards your needs. So just to recap, because any good presentation recaps the points that you've gone over. Know your audience, know where they're coming from and where you want them to go. Craft your recipe, know when you want to send your messages, use the data that you have on your audience to say, how am I going to trigger messages based on event activity, or you can even create messages based on just user information that you have. 3, create a cross-channel ecosystem. Make sure you're providing value on all of the channels that you use. Don't woof. Don't send the same message to every single person on every platform you have. And then lastly, choose the tools that are right for your audience and right for your needs. If you have any questions, you can email me or tweet at me at ClassicFreddy. Thanks.
You want to take a quick question now or two?
Yeah, I'm available for questions.
Here we go. Oh, we got a few.
We got a couple people.
I have 2 questions. First question, I know that you mentioned young people, so just wanted to know if there was a specific age group that you guys specifically work in?
Yeah, so we specifically work with 13 to 25 is really the demographic that we're pushing out to, but we kind of consider age or young person really as what your energy is, what your heart is, but 13 to 25 is really the demographic that we're targeting. But you know, if a 60-year-old person who feels young wants to come and take action with us, that's totally fine.
Got you. Thank you. And last question, could you talk a little bit about if there are companies or individuals who may be worried about people who may have the perception that if you sign up to this text message program that you're going to keep sending me messages, and so I don't want to participate because of the continuation of just automated messages?
So just to make sure I understand your question, is it that there's concern that people don't want to sign up because there's a fear of spam and yeah. No, I think that's definitely a good concern. I think like any marketer, whether that's on email or text, like that's going to be a concern for all of us. And I think that's why it's really important, especially for us, to make sure that we are creating a system that it feels more natural and is respectful of that platform. That's why I'm never going to send out a message that's just like, hey, do this, and it feels just like a notification. We're going to make sure that it's a two-way conversation and set up some of those like support and customer support tools so that if someone texts us back, we're making sure that we're responding to them and that they know that we're listening. And yes, if someone wants to opt out of our list, they can do that, and we make sure that it's easy for them to do and they know how to do that.
Got one.
First, thanks very much for the presentation. Very informative.
Thank you.
You mentioned early on the 160-character constraint. In the world of smartphones, is that still a thing?
So that's a really great question. It's not still a thing. You are able to go beyond the 160 characters at this point. It's kind of like Twitter opened it up from 140 to 280. I just like to kind of think of 160 as that constraint for ourselves. Definitely there's certain things that will go beyond that, and you have to consider, okay, are these extra characters valuable, or are they worth it? Depending on someone's device, 160 is what's going to be accessible for everyone. For young people, there's still a lot of young people who don't have an iPhone or an Android. They have a pretty basic phone. So keeping it at 160 ensures that you're reaching everyone. With some of these tools, though, you can kind of segment out people who have iPhone, who have Android, who maybe have more of a basic plan. So you could say, okay, I'm only going to send 160 to people that have the flip phone, and for these other audiences, I can maybe make it a little more rich or send a photo with that text.
So, and you also mentioned this in tracking people, the type of device that they're using. What sort of tracking is available to you with SMS?
Yeah, so it's kind of gonna depend on the platform or the tool that you use. For example, Mobile Commons, based on phone number, they're able to see in their tool kind of geographical location from that number, kind of lat long. They can tell what kind of device it is. If you're sending someone a link, if that person clicks on the link, you have a better understanding of the device that they're using. Sorry, I think I said that before. What they have is what carrier they're using, where if someone clicks on a link, then you can see, okay, what kind of device is this? What browser are they going to? You're able to get more of that granular detail from when someone's interacting with you.
Thank you.